All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of The Urban Gardener. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today on this episode. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button right down below and follow along with more garden adventures as we continue growing here on The Urban Gardener. It's the 2019 growing season. We're just getting started. Today, we're going to be focusing on our container potatoes. Now, we've grown container potatoes over the last couple of seasons, and I have to say we didn't do too well, but when it comes down to it, there are a couple of things that I think that went wrong or we just didn't do quite right, and I've got some big changes for us in our container potatoes this season, so hopefully we'll get some really good production out of them. Potatoes are a really inexpensive crop, so unless you have really big space to grow potatoes in, you're probably not going to get enough to be able to store for a year's worth of food for you when it comes to the potatoes. But we're just growing in small container storage bins here, and so I'm not really expecting to get that much of a crop yield ultimately, even if we did get some really good sized potatoes. So in the long run, growing potatoes for us is just kind of a fun experiment we're utilizing here in the urban gardens. So I still want to be able to succeed at growing some good sized ones though too. So we're going to keep at it here on the Urban Gardener. We're going to keep trying to do that. And maybe some people have enough space to be able to set aside plenty of these and grow more if you had a successful crop yield and be able to store enough to keep for a while. But ultimately we're going to end up at the store buying some potatoes anyways, so let's just have fun with it here in the Urban Gardener, and we'll see what we get at the end of the season, because that's probably one of the other big things about growing potatoes is they're a plant that you grow and grow and you don't get to know what you've got until the very end of the season and you dig in there and see it. So over the last couple of seasons, like I said, we've done the reveal videos, which really came down to showing us that we didn't really quite get very much at all. I think we even got less than the actual seed potato we put into the containers last season. So hopefully we'll do a lot better with that. So it's one of the things and changes I'm going to make. I'm off here in just a moment to head off to my local co-op, where I'm going to find some locally produced organic seed potatoes. Last year we used those box seed potatoes you find at the big box stores, your Lowe's, your Home Depot, Walmart. They all have them all over the place, but we didn't quite get the yield that we wanted out of them, and now they might work perfectly. Some of the other problems that we've had growing our potatoes might be the actual cause, but I'm going to opt for a different type of seed potato this year. Another opportunity for people to get seed potato is your local organic section of your supermarket. Organically grown potatoes, you can basically set those aside for a little while, let them produce some eyes, and put them into the ground and grow them out. I grew potatoes about 4 or 5 seasons ago from the local supermarket, and I had a really great crop of them. It's just we haven't quite got back to those types of results yet, so we're going to keep trying here on the Urban Gardener. Like I said, off to the store real quick. I'm going to go get us some of those potatoes, and we'll get these seed potatoes started for our 2019 growing season, and we'll look forward to the end of the season when we can see what we finally got out of them. I'm down at the local co-op right now, and they're having a 30% sale on all their bare root trees and plants. So I think we might try us a peach tree in a container this year and see how well we can do with that. So pick up one of those. But I want to show you also right here some of the other bare root offerings that they have here. Right here in this big tub. Just got a bunch of soil there and lots of different bare roots. These are raspberries here. Just pick them fresh right out of the soil. Over here they've got some, looks like what we got? Asparagus here, I'm thinking. Yeah, this is some asparagus roots. You just pick those roots right up out of there, bury them down, spreading out these roots. And right in front, we've got some rhubarb. These just look like pieces of wood here, but as you can tell, if you look at them, you see little parts where they've got growing tips will come out. So like this one here, got little growing tips. And when you bury that under, we'll start a rhubarb plant. Got more asparagus over here. And bare root strawberries. Another thing about strawberries, you get them bare root like this, similar to the rhubarb over there and all the other ones, the asparagus and whatnot. They just look like they're dried and dead and whatnot, but they're not. They're just basically in a dormant state, and as soon as they're buried and the weather is right, these plants will start to regrow into a new season. So, a bunch of different strawberries there. And right over here, we've got horseradish. Again, just looks like some dried old piece of wood you would find laying in the ground or somewhere, but this is actually going to produce all new plants. Just bury it in the soil, and within weeks or so, as the season gets right, we'll start producing a whole new plant. We are here today because we want some of these guys right here. We've got seed potatoes. So I've tried seed potatoes bought at the regular department, big box stores, and I didn't think that they did too well, but I want to continue to use seed potatoes again this year. So I'm down at the local co-op. We're gonna buy some from some local growers and give those a shot in our containers again this year. So while I was out at the store, I not only picked up seed potatoes for our container potatoes that we're gonna grow this season, but I also picked up some potatoes for cooking, because it's time to pull these leeks up out of the ground. It's time to do a little harvest here. I've been waiting on them just a little bit too long, and I'm a bit hungry for some potato leek soup tonight. So let's get these leeks up out of the ground. So, all right, we got some pretty good leeks up out of that harvest, out of the small garden space that we got here. Just a few leeks, just enough that I'm gonna need there to make a nice little soup for myself a little bit later. Got some medium and smaller sized ones there, but look at this one. That's a really, really nice one there. We didn't get as many as we were looking for. We planted out this fall because we did plant out a bunch more. I've got an iCard above right now to an episode. It's a tribute episode to our cat Carl, who passed on this last winter. I'd love for you guys to go and check out that video. It'd really mean a lot to me here to check that out. We didn't get as many because I don't think Carl really liked leeks himself. I think he taste tested one of these leaves and didn't really care for them, and it really probably got him to dig out a bunch of the ones that were up in the front there. So we didn't end up with those leeks, but we did end up with some pretty good ones anyways. So all right, we're back from the local co-op and I've got my seed potatoes here. We've picked out 3 different kinds to go into our 3 different containers that we've got here. But as you all know, when you go to the garden center, you'll always come back with a little bit more than what you intended to. So we did in fact pick up the peach tree. We'll plant that out towards the end of the episode, but first of all, we've got to get these new containers that I've got prepared. So we'll have to drill out some drainage holes because drainage is really important for our potatoes in these type of containers. They will be out in the rain and all of that, so we're going to have to make sure that they can drain properly. So we'll drill some holes in these, and then we'll get down and we'll put some soil in them and talk about the seed potatoes that we chose from the co-op. So all right, we've got our containers all prepared. We've got holes drilled all around for good drainage. What we need to do now is we need to fill in some soil. What I've got prepared here is some soil that I have set out and mixed up with a lot of really good organic fertilizers. Potatoes are really heavy feeders, so you want to make sure that you got a lot of really good organic material and fertilizers in there for them to feed throughout the season. So what we got to do now is fill these about halfway full, and then we'll go over our seed potatoes that we're going to plant out in these containers. So all right, we've got our storage bin containers all ready to go. We've got them drilled in with holes all around for good drainage. We've got them half full of our organic soil that we've got. So we're all ready to plant out these potatoes. So we've got some really nice seed potatoes that we picked out, and we're pretty much going to be growing the same type of potatoes we grew last year, but like I mentioned earlier, we're just trying a different supplier of our potatoes, something a little more local, and hopefully we'll get a really good result from that. So like I said, similar to last year, I've got one of my favorite potatoes because I really like roasted potatoes. I like roasted red potatoes. So we've got some red seed potato here, red Pontiac, organic red Pontiac. And then also you got to grow them out because they're really, really good. You got some organic Yukon Gold potatoes. So we got Yukon Golds, and to add some color to a lot of your dishes, these are really fun to grow. We've got an organic all blue potato. So these will have a really blue inside to them, really add some really nice color to everything. So we've got our seed potatoes there, and we're all set. Let's get those planted out and get these containers placed in our garden. It's time to plant out our seed potatoes into our containers. The potatoes we'll be planting out into this container here will be our red potatoes. We'll plant out red potatoes here. Now the soil level of these containers is approximately 8 to 10 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these seed potatoes and I'm going to bury them about 4 to 5 inches down into the container. Just set your seed potato right down in there. Just simply cover with your soil. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to plant out about 5 more, making it a total of 6 potatoes in our container there. So all right, we've got all of our potatoes planted out into the container there. So what we'll be looking for in a few weeks here is for our plants to grow out of the soil and grow up past this ridge here of the container. So once the plants get up tall enough there, We'll backfill the rest of this container with soil, fill it completely up so that our potatoes should have plenty of room to grow inside of our container, and hopefully we'll get ourselves some really good potatoes. So now let's go move these over into the garden where they'll be growing out this season. So for the last couple of seasons, I have been growing my potatoes in this space here. And we put our containers out right along this part of the back patio. But the problem with this part of the back patio is it's kind of shaded out a bit by our carport, and you're only getting so many daylight hours between the house and the carport. So I'm sure that's not getting enough light to our potatoes the last couple of seasons. At least that's my theory I'm running with this year, so I got a new solution for that. So if everybody's watched my episodes before, I have a neighbor that lives right here, and he gardens out along the alleyway as well. He's been one of the inspirations for me growing and doing all the sort of things I do along the alleyways here. I've got this other neighbor right over on this side here, who's a really nice gentleman, who I asked if it was all right if I had just taken up some space right up behind his house here. I went in and repaired and fixed up his gutters and all of that, and set up some space for our containers right here. Now this is really south-facing sunlight here, so this is going to get all day full sunshine for our potatoes this year, and I'm hoping that's going to be the key for us to growing some really nice potatoes in our containers. So let's get those all set out here and see what we look like. All right, there we are, we're all set. We've got our potatoes all planted out into each of our containers there, and they should be all set to get really good full sunshine. One thing I did want to mention is that my soil was nice and moist already, and I'm expecting some rain coming up here in the next day or two, so I won't be watering them in. Otherwise I would suggest that, watering those potato stems in. But they should be doing really fine there, and in the next couple of weeks we'll hopefully be able to get a really nice update and see how well our container potatoes are doing in this new spot of the garden. But if you haven't forgotten, we've got a peach tree to plant real quick before we end this episode. So all right, before we finish up today, we're going to try another little experiment in the Urban Gardener this year. We're going to give our second shot at growing a container tree. Now, if you remember back in our first season of growing, I'll put an iCard above right now for the episode, we visited Martin Bruchot down in Sacramento, California, and he went over a blood orange tree and planting out those citrus container trees. Now, the blood orange tree is still doing well. It's been sitting inside the house this winter, and in a couple of months we'll be bringing it back out to grow during the summer season here, and we'll see what kind of growth we get out of it this year, and maybe this season or maybe the next season we might start seeing some fruits. And that's going to be the thing about growing the container trees, is that we'll be planting these out, but we won't be expecting any sort of crops this season, maybe even not next season as well. We'll be primarily working on vegetative growth at that point. But what I did is I picked out a frost peach, which is a semi-dwarf variety of peach tree, so it should be able to do all right in our container that we have for it. I've got a big, large 5 gallon container here for it to grow into. And what we'll be doing here is taking this out and transplanting it out. And then what we'll have to do is prune it back a bit. And well, let's get to transplanting this tree. And it's packed in a bunch of this, looks like some sawdust, wood chips there. There we go. So, it's got itself a nice little root system there. What we'll be doing is planting this out so that we can get the base of the tree here, right at the top of our soil line there. Making sure it's all centered nicely into the pot there. And bury just right up to the base. Don't bury it any deeper. Just right up to the base of the plant. It's got all of that sawdust material that it was packaged into, so I'll add that to the top for some mulch. So all right, now that we've planted out our peach tree, one of the things that's advisable is to prune out your tree. It's still early spring. The tree is just now getting to come back to life. And one of the reasons why we're going to prune it back is to also stimulate some growth, because it's not pre-pruned. So you want to check with whoever you've got your tree from whether or not they've already pre-pruned your tree for you. But this one's not pre-pruned. We're going to cut it back in order to, like I said, stimulate some growth in the root system and help our plant have some shape here. So one of the things you want to do is prune these back about 6 inches from the main trunk of the tree. So we've got the main trunk of the tree coming up. So we're going to prune back each of these branches here to about 6 inches from the main trunk. And just above one of the budding nodes right there too. So just cut that right there. It seems like quite a bit there and quite drastic, but overall it'll help maintain a better and healthier tree for us. All right, so there we go. We've got our tree nice and pruned back. It looks like we took off a lot, but again, like I said, this will be for the better, and we should have ourselves a really nice peach tree, and we'll check back here in several weeks here to see how well it's doing. So all right, we've got our 2019 growing season all started out. We've got our potatoes all planted out in the containers. They should be doing really, really well here in this part of the alleyway. Like I said, we should be getting some really good light. So hopefully that'll end up helping us get some better production out of our potatoes this season. But you know, they're just those type of crops where we aren't gonna see or know what we got until the very end of the season when we dig them out. So we'll check in to see what kind of surprises we've got for those at the end of the season, but we'll keep an eye on them as well as we'll keep an eye on our peach tree that we just planted out in the container there. It should be doing pretty well. So we'll see what kind of growth we get out of that. And how about those leeks? We got ourselves a nice little harvest of leeks that were grown out of our garden this winter. So I'm gonna go ahead inside and I'm gonna make me some potato leek soup. For that, I want to thank you all so much for joining me here on this episode. If you can, please give it a big, big thumbs up. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything at all, if I didn't cover anything, you got any questions or anything about our potatoes, the peaches, or anything, please hit me up in that comment section down below. I'd love to answer any questions that you might have. And don't forget, hit the subscribe button, follow along with more episodes, and I'll see you on the very next one. early seedlings when he was younger. And okay, let's do that again. All right. Nice leeks here. Bunch of different. Let's get on our knee. Nice, good size. Out, and I picked out that peach tree. And then we'll plant out our potato. Don't you hate it when your mind just goes blank all of a sudden? Okay, let's try it. Let the bus pass by. Already got their holes. Got a few different varieties, which we should go. We had it pretty good the last time. Get those all planted out. That's fair. That was fair.